The greatest betrayal of my life was not committed by another person. It was committed by me. And it took me more than 70 years to finally say it out loud without flinching. People see the results, never the cost. They see the buildings with my name etched into steel and glass, the interviews, the numbers that make journalists lean forward in disbelief. They see success polished to a shine. They do not see the quiet rooms, the sleepless nights, or the truth that sits heavy in my chest when the world finally goes silent. My name is Eleanor Whitmore, and everything I built began the moment I walked away from myself. I built my fortune the way wounded people often do, out of defiance, out of a need to prove something to people who never actually asked for proof. I climbed higher and faster than anyone expected, fueled by the belief that if I became extraordinary enough, the past would lose its power over me. I told myself that ambition was courage, that distance was freedom, that success would eventually feel like home. It never did. I grew up in a small, unremarkable town, in a house most people would call modest and I would later call sacred. The floors creaked, the walls were thin, winters were cold. But my mother filled that house with warmth in ways money never has. She believed in tending things, plants, meals, quiet moments. She believed that care itself had value. I didn't understand that then. I was young, restless, and painfully certain that my life was meant to be larger than the one unfolding in front of me. I wanted cities, movement, recognition. I wanted to matter. And when I spoke about my dreams, they sounded too big for the rooms they were spoken in. My father reacted with anger, my mother reacted with silence, and that silence became the lie that shaped my life. I decided, without ever asking, that she was ashamed of me, that she didn't believe in my hunger for more, that she saw my ambition as rejection. I let that belief settle into my bones because believing it gave me permission to leave without looking back. I told myself I was choosing strength. In reality, I was choosing escape. That was my first betrayal. I betrayed the softer parts of myself, the parts that needed reassurance, the parts that longed for warmth, for belonging, for someone to say, "You don't have to prove anything to be loved." I buried those needs beneath work schedules, contracts, and long flights across oceans, and it worked, at least on the surface. The years blurred together into milestones and achievements. I became wealthy, powerful, untouchable. I learned how to command rooms, how to negotiate without blinking, how to turn vulnerability into a liability I refused to carry. People admired me, some feared me, many wanted to be me, but none of them knew me. Because the truth is, every success was hollowed out by the same quiet question. Is this enough yet? And no matter how much I accumulated, the answer was always no. The more I gained, the further I drifted from the woman I might have been if I had stayed. I never returned home. Not for holidays, not for funerals, not when the house went quiet and empty. I told myself it didn't matter anymore, that the past had no claim on me, that some doors were better left closed. But even as decades passed, the house remained in my mind, not as a place, but as a wound I refused to tend. Now, at 72, with more money than I could ever spend and no one to truly share it with, I have finally made a decision. I am going back, not to heal, not to reconcile, but to demolish the last standing proof of who I once was. I am going back to erase it. I thought I was prepared for this moment. I thought time had dulled the edges enough. I was wrong. The car slowed almost on its own when the road narrowed, when the asphalt gave way to dirt and weeds began pressing in from both sides. I hadn't driven this way in 47 years, yet my hands knew the turns before my mind did. Muscle memory is cruel like that. It remembers what the heart tries to forget. When the house finally came into view, my breath caught in my throat. It was smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I had grown too large for it. The white paint had peeled away in long, tired strips, exposing gray wood beneath. Several windows were broken, others clouded with age and dust. The front porch sagged, bowed under decades of neglect, as if it were exhausted from waiting. I sat there for a long moment, the engine still running, my reflection staring back at me from the windshield. An old woman now, perfectly tailored coat, hands that had signed contracts worth millions, hands that had never once knocked on this door again. I stepped out of the car, my shoes sinking slightly into the soft, untended earth. The air smelled different here. Wetter, heavier, honest. Each step toward the house felt like a confrontation I could no longer delay. And then I saw them. At first I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. Color didn't belong here, not anymore. But there they were, roses, red, yellow, and pink, blooming stubbornly against the crumbling foundation. Alive, thriving, impossible. My mother's roses. My chest tightened as if something inside me had cracked open without warning. She planted them every spring, no matter how tired she was, no matter how little money we had. A home needs beauty, she used to say. Otherwise, it forgets why it exists. I had let this place forget. Guilt rose sharp and sudden, and with it came denial. This didn't mean anything, I told myself. Someone else must have done this. A neighbor, a passerby, anyone but the past reaching for me. I walked closer, my fingers hovering just above a bloom, afraid to touch it. The petals were soft, real, warm from the sun. This wasn't memory, this was now. The house felt like it was watching me, not accusing, remembering. I circled it slowly, noting the overgrown grass, the collapsed fence, the way nature had tried to reclaim everything I abandoned. And yet, beneath the neglect, there was care. The ground near the garden was turned recently. The roses were pruned. Someone had loved this place recently. That realization unsettled me more than decay ever could. I came here with a plan. The paperwork was already signed, tucked neatly inside my car. The demolition crew would arrive soon. Clean, efficient, final. Once the house was gone, there would be nothing left to haunt me. No proof of who I used to be. No reminder of the woman I betrayed when I chose ambition over belonging. So why did my chest feel so heavy? I told myself to stay focused. This was not a pilgrimage. This was closure. I had built my life on decisive endings. This would be no different. And then I heard it. Laughter, light, young, unmistakably human. I froze. The sound came from behind the house. Voices layered together, careless and alive. Children's voices. My heart began to pound, sharp and sudden, as if my body understood before my mind did that something here was very wrong, or very right. I stood there, caught between the life I had built and the one I had tried to bury, listening as the past breathed around the corner. I didn't move at first. I couldn't. For a moment, I simply stood there listening, as if any sudden motion might shatter the fragile proof that the sound was real. Children's voices didn't belong here. Not in a house I had abandoned to rot, not in a place I had already decided to erase. But the laughter continued, soft, uneven, punctuated by a voice that sounded older, steadier, like someone pretending to be brave for the sake of the others. I walked around the side of the house slowly, my pulse loud in my ears. Each step felt unreal, like crossing into a memory that hadn't happened yet. And then I saw them. 3 children stood in what used to be my mother's vegetable garden. The rows were crooked now, but unmistakably intentional. Tomatoes climbed uneven stakes, herbs grew in careful clusters. And near the edge, the roses, my mother's roses, were being tended with a gentleness that made my throat tighten. The oldest was a boy, tall for his age, maybe 12 or 13. His hands were dirty, his posture alert, protective. Beside him was a younger boy, quieter, focused on arranging flowers into a basket with careful precision. And the smallest, a little girl in a faded blue dress, hovered close to the older boy, her fingers wrapped tightly around a stem as if it anchored her to the world. They looked up when they noticed me. Fear flashed across their faces instantly, sharp and practiced. The little girl stepped back. The younger boy froze. The oldest straightened, placing himself between me and the others without hesitation. "Can we help you?" he asked. His voice didn't shake, but his hands did. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. I had faced hostile takeovers, courtroom battles, rooms full of men who wanted to outmaneuver me. None of that prepared me for this. My voice sounded strange, unused. "This is private property." "We know," the boy said. "We live here." The words hit me harder than any accusation ever could. "You live here?" I repeated. "Not inside," he clarified quickly. "The house isn't safe, but we take care of the land. And the garden." I looked at the roses again. at the vegetables, at the undeniable evidence of care. "Where are your parents?" The silence that followed was heavy and immediate. The younger boy looked down. The little girl's eyes filled with tears she tried bravely not to spill. "It's just us," the oldest said quietly. "Has been for a while." Something in his voice, too old, too practiced, twisted inside me. He introduced himself as Marcus. The younger boy was Daniel. The little girl's name was Lily. They had been here for months, surviving quietly, deliberately unseen. Their mother had died. The system had planned to separate them, so they ran, together, because being hungry together felt safer than being alone apart. As he spoke, I felt something unfamiliar rise in my chest. Not pity, recognition. They had chosen loyalty over safety. I had chosen safety over loyalty. They tended the land because, as Lily explained in a voice barely above a whisper, homes need care, otherwise they get lonely. She said it like a fact, not a metaphor. I had built my life around the idea that independence meant never needing anyone. And here stood 3 children who understood something I had spent 70 years avoiding. Needing each other wasn't weakness. It was survival. Marcus explained how they made it work. The well still functioned. They grew food. He did small jobs in town. Nobody asked questions if you didn't give them reasons to. They were careful, quiet, invisible, just like the house had been to me. I felt the weight of my own choices press down on me. I had walked away believing no one would notice, believing I was replaceable, and in doing so, I had made myself invisible to the very things that mattered. "You take care of this place," I said. "Yes, ma'am," Marcus replied. "Someone should." The words landed with devastating clarity. Someone should. I had convinced myself that leaving was inevitable, that ambition required sacrifice, that warmth was a luxury. These children with nothing but each other had disproven every excuse I had ever made. I told them the truth then, that the house was mine, that I had grown up here, that I had come back to tear it down. The change was immediate. Marcus's shoulders sagged, Daniel's grip tightened on the basket. Lily's tears finally fell. "We'll leave," Marcus said quickly. "We just need one day." One day, that was all they asked for. The same house I had abandoned for nearly half a century, and they asked for one more night. I looked at them, at the fierce protectiveness in Marcus's eyes, at Daniel's quiet resolve, at Lily clutching a rose as if it were a promise, and something inside me fractured completely. They were everything I had not been brave enough to be. Faithful, present, loyal to one another. And I finally understood. My betrayal hadn't ended when I left home. I had repeated it every day since, choosing distance over connection, achievement over truth, armor over warmth. Standing there in the garden I had abandoned, surrounded by life I never planned for, I felt the terrifying pull of a question I had avoided for decades. What if success was never the point? What if the thing I had been running from was the only thing that could make me whole? My hands began to shake before I even understood why. Marcus had disappeared inside the house for a moment, moving carefully, as if every step mattered. When he returned, he carried a small wooden box. It was old, worn smooth by time, the edges softened from years of being touched, then forgotten, then found again. "We found this upstairs," he said quietly. "We didn't want to throw anything away. It felt important." Something inside me recoiled. Something else leaned forward, desperate. The box looked familiar in a way that made my chest ache. I took it from him, surprised by its weight. Not physical, but emotional, as if it carried years I had refused to carry myself. I sat down on the edge of the porch. The wood creaked beneath me, the same way it had when I was a girl. For a moment, I couldn't open the lid. I was terrified of what I might find. Or worse, of what I might finally understand. Inside were photographs, my parents younger than I ever remembered them, my father smiling in a way I had almost forgotten he could, my mother standing in the garden, dirt on her hands, sunlight in her hair, and then me, a younger version of myself, barefoot, laughing, holding a basket of roses. My breath hitched. Beneath the photographs lay an envelope, yellowed, fragile, my name written across the front in handwriting I would have recognized anywhere. "Eleanor." The world narrowed to that single word. I hadn't seen her handwriting in decades. My fingers hovered over the envelope, suddenly unsure if I deserved to open it, if some truths were meant to remain buried. But the children were watching me now. Quiet, patient, as if they understood that something sacred was happening. I opened the letter. The date at the top told me everything before the words even began. 3 months before she died. 3 months before the house went silent. 3 months before I told myself it was too late to go back. My vision blurred as I read. My dearest Eleanor, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't know where life has taken you or how far away you've gone, but I hope this letter finds you when you need it most. My chest tightened painfully. I want you to know something I was never brave enough to say out loud when you were younger. I was never ashamed of you. Not once. Not for dreaming. Not for wanting more. Not for leaving. The words shattered something deep inside me. I was quiet because I was afraid. Afraid of holding you back. Afraid that if I said too much, you would stay when you were meant to fly. I believed in you more than you ever knew. I still do. A sound escaped me then, something between a breath and a sob. I hadn't made that sound since I was a child. I planted the roses again this spring, red, yellow, and pink. I like to imagine that one day, someone will care for them. Maybe even you. And if you ever come home and wonder if you belong here, I want you to know this house has always been waiting for you. My hands trembled violently now. Tears fell onto the paper, blurring the ink. You never had to prove anything to me, Eleanor. You were already enough. I am proud of you, not for what you build, but for who you are. If life brings you back here, remember this. It's never too late to come home. Love always, Mama. I couldn't breathe. The lie I had built my entire life around collapsed in an instant. The belief that had driven every ambition, every sleepless night, every ruthless decision, it was never true. She had believed in me. She had loved me, and I had left anyway. The realization was unbearable. I folded forward, the letter pressed to my chest as if it could somehow stitch together what had been torn apart. The sobs came hard and fast, years of restraint breaking loose without mercy. I cried for the girl who left because she felt unwanted. I cried for the woman who spent decades proving something that never needed proof. I cried for the mother who waited, planting roses in silence. I had betrayed myself not out of necessity, but out of fear. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of staying small. Fear of asking the one question that could have changed everything. The children didn't speak. Lily climbed into my lap without hesitation, her small arms wrapping around me as if this were the most natural thing in the world. Daniel leaned against my side. Marcus sat beside me, steady and present. I wasn't alone. For the first time in my life, I allowed myself to feel that fully. I thought she didn't believe in me, I whispered, my voice breaking. I thought I had to leave to matter. Marcus shook his head gently. She waited for you. The truth landed softly this time. Painful, yes, but healing. I had spent my life running from a home that never stopped loving me. And now, surrounded by 3 children who had protected that love without even knowing its origin, I understood something with terrifying clarity. The greatest betrayal was never leaving the house. It was leaving myself behind. I stayed there for a long time after the tears stopped. The sun was already lowering in the sky, turning the edges of the old house gold, the way it used to in the evenings when my mother called me in for dinner. The letter rested in my hands like something alive, as if it had been waiting all these years for the right moment to be read aloud in my heart. For the first time, I didn't feel the urge to run. I looked around, at the porch, the peeling paint, the uneven boards, and instead of seeing decay, I saw possibility. Not the kind measured in profit or potential resale value, but the kind that lives quietly inside a second chance. I stood up slowly and walked back to my car. The folder with the demolition papers was exactly where I had left it, neat and final. For a moment, I held it in my hands, feeling the weight of a decision I had once thought was necessary. Then I tore it in half. The sound startled the children. Marcus looked up, uncertain. Daniel's eyes widened. Lily tilted her head, curious. "I'm not tearing anything down," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "Not this house, not this place." The words felt real the moment I spoke them. I made the calls that evening, not the ones I had planned, but the ones that mattered. I canceled the demolition. I contacted architects who specialized in restoration, not erasure. I spoke to social workers, not to separate the children, but to protect them. This time, I didn't disappear behind money. I stayed present. The restoration took months. We worked slowly, carefully, honoring what had been while making space for what could be. The floors were reinforced but kept. The windows were repaired, not replaced. The fireplace was cleaned and brought back to life. And the garden. Oh, the garden. We planted together. Marcus took charge like a seasoned foreman. Daniel labeled everything meticulously. Lily chose colors with absolute confidence. Red, yellow, and pink roses lined the path once more. Every day, the house breathed a little easier, and so did I. During that time, something else shifted quietly into place. I stopped sleeping in hotels when I visited. Then I stopped leaving at all. I learned the rhythms of the house again, the way it held warmth in the morning, the way silence settled at night without feeling empty. I was no longer alone. The legal process took longer than the construction. Paperwork, interviews, waiting. But for the first time in my life, patience didn't feel like punishment. When the judge finally granted me legal guardianship, I didn't feel victorious. I felt grateful. That evening, we ate dinner together in the restored kitchen. Nothing extravagant. Soup, bread, vegetables from the garden. Laughter echoing against walls that had waited decades to hear it again. After dinner, I gave them each an envelope. College funds, futures secured, not as repayment, not as rescue, but as belief. This doesn't mean you owe me anything, I told them. Your lives are your own. This is just support. Marcus looked at me for a long time before nodding. Daniel smiled softly. Lily climbed into my lap without asking, as if the answer had always been obvious to her. Are you our grandma now? She asked. I felt tears rise again, but this time they were warm. If you'll have me, I said. That night, after they went to sleep, I walked through the house alone. I touched the walls, the banister, the door frame where my height had once been marked in pencil. I finally understood what my mother meant. A home isn't something you own, it's something you return to. I had spent my life believing that betraying myself was the price of survival. That leaving was the only way to become someone. But standing there, surrounded by love I never expected to find again, I understood the truth that had waited patiently for me all along. Sometimes we betray ourselves because we don't know any other way to survive, but it is never too late to come home. Never too late to choose warmth over armor. Never too late to be who you were meant to be. If you've listened this far, I'd love to know what you think. Did this story resonate with you? Would you have made the same choices I did? Please leave a comment below and tell me your thoughts. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to support my channel. Your support means more than you know. Thank you for coming home with me.